My name's Craig Evans, and then I'm kind of like the farm manager here. And so this farm was one of the original farms in Nanaimo. So it's 47 acres in total, and it was purchased in 1865. It used to be over 1,000 acres at that time. And so as you can tell, it's been getting smaller and smaller, and subdivisions have been crouching in, getting closer and closer. The farm goes all the way to the top of the cliffs across the river here. The Millstone River flows through the property, and there's fields on either side. Nanaimo Food Share, we lease the property off the owner, and we're looking at seeing what we would have to do if we wanted to purchase the property. We've set up 2 deer-proofed vegetable areas that we're doing production in. You know, this lower field and the upper field. And there's also a deer-proof blueberry field that's set up where they harvest thousands of pounds of blueberries a year. So I thought we might just wander around the farm and have a look at the different areas that we have. So this is the lower field that we fenced and deer-proofed earlier this spring, and then we've planted it and got irrigation lines out to it, and we're just developing this section. So this is the first year we've been farming in this section. You'll see we have a lot of like drip lines going out. So when we turn the water on, the water comes out of these drip lines here. You know, there's probably a little more than 1.5 acres in this section. There's bears and cougars live in the woods over there. So if ever you're working, it's always good just to kind of be aware who's here. I've seen some pretty big deer with antlers that the minute I saw them, I was like, gee, if they wanted to chase me down and gore me, you got to be careful. So you just always be aware who's here. The bears, they kind of walk on the outside of the fence, and there's a place here they cross the river and go somewhere else. So, and then in the winter, this whole field here will flood. This will become a lake as the river rises above its banks, you know, during all the winter rains. And so that's why we're kind of on this upper slope here. And so we'll just walk around the field this way. You see, these are like different types of squash and pumpkins that are here we have growing, and then also some cabbage. And so it's the first year it's been planted, and so we just wanted to kind of see. We planted a wide variety of crops to see kind of what's going to grow well here. You know, here we are, it's the first day of September. We're just getting things prepared in order to do some harvesting, because soon the frost will come, and we want to make sure we pick and bring in all the squash and make sure it's all preserved. You can see the pepper plants that are growing here. Yeah, some are looking really great, some are not looking really great. And it's we learned a lot from here. And so there's a pest in soils, in fields, called wireworm. And wireworm is like the larval stage of beetles, certain types of beetles. So we plowed the soil and put all the grass and the sod down under, and then the top soil was just on top. And then we cultivated it, rototilled it. But see, all those click beetle wireworm larvae went underground. And then we rototilled the top, but they were still safe down there. Then we put our plants in the soil, and everybody came up and was like, oh great, here's some roots, because they feed off roots. And so in areas where there's no plants, that's where the wireworm ate all the roots off the plants. And same, you see some of these plants are really doing poorly, and then some are doing fine. There's not a problem. when we pulled them, when we were like, what's up? We'd pull them up and there'd be like 10 wireworms stuck to their roots, just like, you know, don't bother me. What's going on?
Are you growing ghost peppers?
The hottest pepper we're growing is jalapenos. And so we have in the past grown really hot peppers, you know, habaneros and ghost peppers. But you know what? It's always like, I would say to a group like yours, whatever you do, don't take a bite out of this. And one of you would take a bite out of it. And we'd be like, if you take a bite out of this plant, it's going to wreck your whole day, like the whole day. But there'll always be people who will take a bite and then go, like, you were right. My whole day, I woke up the next day, I felt a bit better. So we decided, you know what, maybe we won't grow them here where people have that access. So,
Someone to grab one.
yeah, or even to make that mistake. And then you can see we grow a lot of leafy greens. So in here there's rows of cucumbers. Some did well, some didn't do well. We try and pick everything once a week, because once a week we put food into the good food box. And then you can see this is like a row of Swiss chard. You can come this way if you want. And then these are all leafy greens. And you've always heard you should eat like a cup or so, a couple of cups of leafy greens a day. You see, with these plants, it's really easy. You can just cut, you know, you take a knife and you cut off the leafy green part, and then you've got these stalks that are just like celery that you can cut and put into a stir fry. And then at the very end, you can throw the leafy greens in your stir fry, so you get like lots of the leafy green material. And you see, you only pick like 5 or 6 of these, put an elastic band on it, and then everybody wants one. Do you know what I mean? So we could pick hundreds a week and make sure they go into the good food box. That works out pretty good. And so our kind of primary purpose here is to grow as much food as possible. And so we're figuring out what's the best way to do that. Like, we don't want to have so much that it's going to waste, but we want it to come on stream every week. How do we do that? And it's different than if we were growing and taking it to market and trying to sell it. We're growing it, it's going in the food box, people want it. Like, it's not a problem to move it. If you're ever looking for something easy to grow, like, honest, if the pandemic gets worse and we're all parents are dead and there's only young people left, Swiss chard is what you want to grow, because it grows so easy. Look, it knows what to do on its own. Like, honest, you could have been swimming in the river every single day, come back, just make sure deer didn't eat it, you know, so it's fenced off properly, and then you've got like food. And then in the end, when you're really hungry, you might not eat this today, but if you're really hungry and you know how to cook it and it tastes great, you'll be rocking. You'll be like, I'm so glad every day. And the stuff, it doesn't even need a refrigerator. The next day you just come out and pick some more. So it's got all the attributes of a food you'd want to know how to grow and use. So every day, plus this stuff overwinters. And so it could be freezing temperature. I've seen this stuff freeze solid and then warms up, and it's still like, oh yeah, I could eat that, no problem. And in the end, you'll only have so much cash to spend on food. Why not have a 50-foot row of this stuff somewhere where you know it is, that you can just go grab it and eat it? You'll be way better off. And it's not coming from California. Like, go into the store and ask, where's your Swiss chard? I double dare you. Go in there and say, where's your Swiss chard? Oh, how much? What? It doesn't look like the stuff Food Share's growing. Where do you get that crap? And it comes from California. What? So I don't like eating it just like this. Yeah, I only eat Swiss chard if it's cooked. Although you can take these little leaves and chop them up and throw them in a salad mix, and it works out pretty good. Here, grab it. You know, and if you had a salad dressing for that, or something that gave it a little bit of extra taste, people, you might just go, yeah, that works good enough. So a lot of people will put Swiss chard in a percentage of their salad mix, you know, when they're cutting up something for a salad with cabbage and other stuff. Okay, we'll lock you in. Yeah, we got to get something so we can do some outdoor cooking here.
Yeah.
Then we'll head to this other field, the upper field. So this is our upper field that we have, and we fenced this in last spring, so a year ago. We're just getting ready to put a greenhouse up. We got some seedlings here. There's a few rows of tomatoes where some other crops can go. Here we've got like rows of cabbage growing, areas that we've already harvested from. We've got some Swiss chard here growing. And you can see this area that had already been, doesn't suffer from the same wireworm problems as the other. This was set up last year, so most of the wireworms were gone by then, by the time that we started growing in here. So, and then here's another squash patch that we have growing. And squash is great because you pick it, you just put it in a room, you kind of let it dry a bit, and then we finished our last squash in August. And so some of these squashes could last right till next summer. And so what a perfect food that doesn't require refrigeration. All you got to make sure is it doesn't, you know, you go through your pile of squash, anything that's starting to go, they might be squash that you would want to start cooking with now. You know, and with squash, you know, you can make so many things to eat. And my favorite is squash burgers. And so I'll mix 50% squash with things like rice and lentils, flavor it however you like flavor. If you want it really hot and spicy, spice it up. If you want it savory, make it like that. Add salt, and then I form them into patties and bake them like giant cookies, and then eat them in as a burger. Yep, come on right through, no problem. With food, the key is, you'd think a brilliant society would say, you know what, with food, find out what grows and stores really well, then find out how to cook it in a million ways that you like every way. And so if squash can be cooked 10 ways and it seems different, and one of them's ice cream, you'd be like, this rocks. I want this stuff. I'll say it a million times, but the plant knows exactly what to do. I don't know how to grow squash. The plant knows how to grow squash. I only know if it needs water, or if there's a disease, or if bugs are eating it. I'm kind of like the shepherd. So this whole farming thing is kind of a no-brainer. Plus, every plant makes its own seeds. So, like, I don't know, man. That's a pretty good career. You're growing something, it makes its own seeds, and then they grow on their own, and you can save them and grow them out next year. That's pretty easy. You've been born into an economic system and a society that was going crazy. It was making so many mistakes. And you have that opportunity to say, you know what? I'm going to kind of put my life energy, my force, what I do every day for, like, and how many summers are you going to get? If you're all in your 20s, you might get 40 or 50 more summers. So it becomes way more valuable spending it doing like wondrous things, doing things that really count, that aren't ripping off the planet and ripping off other people who live in other places of the world, and just taking care of ourselves and trying to build sort of a culture of food security within our area. And you can carry that within your heart wherever you go. And even if you learn how to cook with this stuff, You could go to, say, New Zealand and go, who's growing local kale, squash? I know how to do fantastic recipes. Like, you know, put it into your back pocket as one of the skills that you pick up and learn. Yeah, so and then we also plant flowers. You see these are snapdragons, so it's always nice having something beautiful nearby as well that grows. And then when we give out food boxes, we try and make sure they have like a bunch of flowers to go with it. Everyone likes to get a flower. You can see the squash growing in here. Here is like a row of basil. And many of you probably have basil in like spaghetti sauces and things like that. So it's a pretty nice spice. Feel free to pick a leaf and have a smell. So then we have a few rows of this red root Swiss chard growing here, and we have a few rows of cabbage growing here. And you can see the cabbage, some of the heads are ready. You kind of pick them when they get to a certain stage, and every cabbage plant has its own idea when it's going to be ready. You know, there's lots of leaves here. It's not hard. If we had to pick like 5,000 leaves, we got it. You know, and if there's 10 leaves in a bundle, you got 500 bundles. And you can see the size of the cabbage here. Like, they're big cabbages. Go into the store and see how much, like that might be how much is cabbage worth a pound. It's minimum like $1. Sometimes it's $2 a pound. And so if you pick a cabbage and it's like a 3-pound cabbage, that could be like $6, and you've just got your cabbage. But if you're making a stir fry or a salad, you might want some cabbage, you might want some chard, you might want some basil, a few peppers. You know, you got to balance things out. So, and you can see we've got wood chips in the rows, and now, so what we're doing is we're weeding rows and then putting wood chips down so weeds don't grow in. This is a good example of the polyculture. So you see, in amongst the plants, there's really no weeds growing. And these will be dedicated growing beds for the next few years. We'll just add nutrients to these beds and just grow in and use these as walkways and the growing beds. And then we'll see how things go. And then we're going to expand this field to take in this section. So we'll start preparing this fall, doing this lower section. So as you walk by, just have a look and see how many spaghetti squash are in these beds here. You see some of them are huge. And then on our right here are 2 rows. The closest one is oregano. We keep it watered. There's beehives on the farm. The bees have places they can go and get their pollen and nectar. And then we cut this, dehydrate it, sell it, and put it into the good food box as well. Yeah, feel free if you want, like to pick a bunch and just have that smell. And so every culture has their different favorite foods, and there's a lot of people in Nanaimo that really like eggplants. Oh, and careful when you don't step on the poly, because underneath there's water lines, and then you could put a hole in the water line. Okay, you notice whenever I step, I always step right across so I don't touch anything rather than right on the center. Even though it's been pouring rain, you know, the ground's really dry. And so without the water, there wouldn't be anything growing here. It'd be just like this side of the field, everything dried out. So it's important to have our water lines going. So, and then remember how I was saying how every plant likes to grow seed, has to grow seed in order to reproduce. These 2 greenhouses are our carrot seed tunnels. And so these flowers here are carrots going to seed. And so there's 2 different varieties of carrots here. And we have to keep them covered so other insects won't come and go, oh, I'll land here and pollinate this one, then, oh, I'm going to go over to this one and pollinate this one, because then you'd end up blending the two separate types of species of or varieties of carrots. Also, there's a weed that grows, and it's called wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace. And so that weed is everywhere around. And so if a bee went to the wild carrot and then came to these carrots, it would turn the seed into like something that grows Franken carrots. Do you know what I mean? They totally look like monster carrots, and they wouldn't be edible. So you'd chew on the root and you'd keep chewing, but it'd be like chewing a stick. You know how a carrot, eventually you chew it, it turns almost to mush and you can swallow it? Whereas you chew on a piece of wood, you're still swallowing pieces of wood like splinters. And so we have to be careful no outside insects get into these tunnels and cross-pollinate with our species that we grow. There are types of carrots that we really like. One we call vampire carrot. So it's like an orange carrot, but it looks like it's been dipped in blood. And so it has a red outside cover on it. And the other is called Amsterdam Gold. And Amsterdam Gold is a variety of carrot that no one, like if you plant it out, it doesn't all grow the same looking type of carrot. Each carrot is a bit different. There's huge ones, might weigh 7 pounds, one carrot, and there's little ones. And so it hasn't been bred down to be one type of carrot. Now we'll head over to the blueberry field. So we'll walk up the fields, and of course blueberry plants are perennial, so it's kind of neat. You plant them once and they just grow year after year. You just have to prune them, harvest them, take care of them. If you walk through, you might find most of the blueberries are gone, but there's still a few here and there. Aha.
But what's with the 11, 12B?
Oh, so then we could say, hey, head to row 11B, and that row hasn't been picked yet.
Okay.
And then I'll make sure, you and Gavin are on 11B. And you can see around some of these beds, there's a lot of bark mulch and wood chips put down, and that's to keep the weeds down from growing around the blueberry bushes, weeds that would steal any nutrients that the plant could use. The birds would love to come in here and eat blueberries all day long, but on the side of the barn, there's a laser system. And the laser system, it's like disco laser. So the laser dances around this field, and the birds only know that there's something coming, there's some activity coming, and they view the laser as a hazard. And I've seen flocks come in, land, and then the laser comes by and they all fly away. Bees just kind of do their thing, and then we come in and steal their honey. That's why we got to wear the suits. Most people like eating honey, and using wax. It was an important crop. And then without bees, things like blueberries wouldn't get pollinated. They need bees to pollinate the crop, so you wouldn't have blueberries or other veggies, certain veggies, if there weren't bees taking the pollen and actually pollinating them.
How often do you harvest the honey?
And so some people harvest twice a year. But if you harvest at least once a year, and then you always leave some honey for the bees. They're kids. They're making honey so they can have bigger families. These are the old dairy barns that were on the property. So the last really use of this property was as a dairy farm. And so it was an award-winning dairy farm. And so they had cattle in each side, and in the center here was a chicken coop, lots of chickens. And so we're renovating the barns now so we can use some of the upstairs as classrooms and offices. Yeah, and I grew up on a farm. We had a big barn. It was, when I was a kid, it was all beef cattle. And so growing up with beef cattle, as soon as I became 13, I realized I was a closet vegetarian. And I had to, because these mothers, they really love their kids. And And I didn't want to interfere with that. And the dads actually have their families, you know, everybody's really protective. And they kind of know what's going on, they got a routine. And so when I was 17, I was kind of like, I came out of the closet and I was like, you know what, I am not a meat eater. And my parents and my family were like, what the heck? And it was like, no, I'm not going to eat animals anymore. That's it. And my mom said, well, I'm not cooking anything for you because I got your dad and your 4 brothers to cook for. So you're going to have to cook your own food. And I was like, yep, no problem. And that kind of saved me, because then I was like, okay, now what do I do? And I had to go look in recipe books, find out how to balance proteins, figure out how am I going to eat healthy, because I'm 17, I want to be like 28 one day. And so you got to make sure you eat properly. And for me, at an early age, it just felt kind of awkward eating the creatures. And so vegetables, they never run away when you come to pick them, but like most other creatures, they'll run away if you want to kind of harvest them. So to me, that's kind of like the first step in thinking, oh, maybe every creature values its life. And vegetables, I'm sure, value their lives too, but you know, still a vegetarian, you bet. Yeah, totally. No one was vegetarian. No one. In fact, the only vegetarians I knew were weird. So I guess I must have been weird too. I should get a picture of those who want a picture standing here. We got her while you're still young, before the hard life of being in the program has weakened you.